Welcome to the Good News Mama podcast, a place to get in touch with other mamas, share the load, and know the Lord. Here we aim to lift each other up in the good news of Jesus and the laughter that comes with motherhood. We are a community of mamas just trying to keep the main thing the main thing. I'm your host, Lynn Carter, and each time you tune in, I pray you are encouraged and that you leave challenged and breathe a sigh of relief that you are understood. We were not meant to do life alone, Mama. Thanks for joining in. Let's do this and let's share the good news. Y'all, you got those friends. You know, those friends that you haven't seen in forever. And you just call them up, send them a text, and you just pick up right where you left off. That's the kind of friends I'm talking to on this podcast episode. You have no idea what this couple means to me. I mean, I say it over and over again in the episode, so you might get the picture, but Cameron and Eric Lowe have been so instrumental in speaking truth into my life and encouraging me and Ben in our marriage. And y'all, you just have to give this a listen. I have really got to give the disclaimer that I have got to get better at my time management skills, because every time I get on this show, I am just enjoying everything I'm talking about with these folks, and I just can't shut up. And I don't want it to be over because I still have questions and the time is up. But I may just have to divide this into two parts because I don't want you to miss anything. And I know sometimes a long episode is deterring when you don't have that much continuous time, and you definitely want to finish the stuff in this podcast. Cameron and Eric lay it all out there from their 0 to 20-ish years, talking about newlywed times, the way that they've changed in communicating, how personality tests have really helped open their eyes about how each other operate. They talk about raising their kids and some of the priorities that they established with them for getting to know their hearts and teaching them important things about finances and just really guiding them and loving them, and even trying to navigate the difficult years of parenting teenagers. We bring up so many amazing topics and a lot of real life examples that we can relate to. They give great advice, and they're just awesome people with sincere hearts, and they really love the Lord. It's evident in the way they talk and the way they carry themselves and the way they prioritize things in their lives. And they just truly want people to love Jesus and thrive in relationship with him and thrive in their marriage. And I can attest to that because so many times they have reached out to Ben and I just to check in, just to offer to help us out. We haven't even been talking to them, and they'll just pop in and say, hey, we're going to do this for you. And I just think it's amazing, and I want that for my life. I want to be that for other people. So if you don't get anything out of this episode, well, your volume button is broken. That's all I got to say, because this couple is amazing. So enjoy it as we laugh, as we get real, as we pick on each other a little bit, because these people are amazing. So go ahead and get you some good news on part 2A of the marriage series with Cameron and Eric Lowe. Welcome, Cameron and Eric. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Hey, Lenny.
Hey.
Hey. Thanks for coming on. So I want you guys to start by just giving a quick background, how long you've been married, how many kids, that sort of thing. Just let us know who you are.
Sure. You want me to start?
Go for it.
Okay. So we have been married. It will be 22 years in June this year. Golly. And we have two girls, teenage daughters, which is a whole nother podcast, Lynn. And they are 14 and 17 this year.
I can't believe that. I'm sorry. That doesn't seem possible.
Well, it does not.
You're telling me.
17. Oh, man. You're going to be -1 in just another year.
Yeah.
It's going to be
That's
off
right.
to college. Gosh.
Different.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so go ahead and tell me what you do. Tell me any little fun facts that you might want us to know about this stage in your life, because I haven't got to catch up with you guys in a while. Are you still working for the church, Eric?
No. About a year and a half ago, I went back to doing what I was doing before.
Yeah.
So now I'm working for O'Reilly Auto Parts. So doing software out of the house again.
Yeah.
So just working from home. And loving it. Love it.
And I'm doing the same thing. Still doing the extension director thing.
which is
but not in Camden anymore. So I won't see.
You did update me on that part. I caught that briefly. You won't see Ben anymore.
No.
You were saying last time you were enjoying his hairdo. I remember that.
Yeah. It's just heckling him about his barber.
Yeah. I think he wants a mohawk, which I'm strongly against, but he just wants to see how big of a mohawk he can get and then shave it off. I'm sure he'd appreciate me mentioning that, but that's kind of his goal.
It's going to be pretty up there if he were to go for that right now.
He thinks he can make it happen. I'm like, I don't think it can be that big. Oh, yes, it can. So I'll try to get some pictures for proof when that happens. You remember he did the Friar Tuck thing several years ago when his hair was longer and he just shaved the bald piece in the top. And then one day he at the store took his hat off and was like scratching his head. And he said the lady behind the register was like, oh my gosh. But anyway, yes. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. I brought you guys on to just give me all the good stuff that I need to know for the next 10 years plus. And any words of wisdom that you can start up. I was thinking kind of starting, if you want to, you can start back to newlywed years. Ben and I just did an episode where we talked about our first 10 years. And then, anything in there that you think is beneficial, I need to know it. So whatever you got, lay it on me. Okay.
All right. We have learned a lot since the first 10 years. I'll tell you that much.
We learned a lot in those 10 years.
And in those 10 years, yeah, for sure. We fight a whole lot fairer now, I think. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
When I think of you guys and your marriage and how you've helped me so far, I think about the emphasis that you guys place on time together, date nights. I remember the binder.
Yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah.
So I would say very early on in our marriage, Eric was really good about committing to regular date nights and going somewhere for our anniversary, getting away together, those types of things. In fact, I can remember because we used to take turns planning our anniversary trip, a long weekend every year. And I think it was maybe year 4 when you finally told me that I was supposed to be doing every other year. So by the time we got to year 5, I finally planned one. And then we did pretty good with that.
Yeah.
For a while. Here lately, we've been planning them together. But,
and it was surprises, right? Like the other person had no idea.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Right.
But like I said, for the first 5 years, he did 1 and 3, and then or maybe 2 and 4, and then I caught up until we got to 5.
It's good.
But I think that was a good jumping off point for us. It started us on a good path toward prioritizing time together. And I think it's something that's always been pretty important, especially now that we've got kids.
Yes.
And I think it's amazing especially if you do it over a weekend, a long weekend, that first half day or full day, you're still in the grind. Your mind, at least, is still in the grind of work and kids and that kind of stuff. And it's not till Saturday morning or if it's a longer weekend, Friday morning when you wake up, that you really start to have the opportunity to focus on each other and just relax. And, if we don't get away, there's no way that's going to happen. The phone will be ringing, work will be calling. So that getting away and having a little bit of time at the beginning to just kind of de-stress.
Yeah.
And allows us to that time to remember who each other were.
Oh, yeah. I married you for a reason.
And I think, too, kind of early on, sometimes, and then date night, too. He was real adamant about that and always put it on the calendar. And I think early on, sometimes I looked at it as a chore almost. But I think as we've been married longer and realized how important that is, we've gotten to a point now where we're we need to do 2 trips. We need one in the winter and one in the summer.
Nice.
Just because I guess we recognize the need for that more.
Well, date nights, are the same way. So we do that once a month and are the same way where, like she said, they can seem like an appointment on the calendar and they literally are on the calendar. It's a recurring event on the calendar. So, we stick to it. But those first few minutes sitting in the car are oh, I could be going and doing this, and I need to do this, and we need to go talk to these people, and we need to have this conversation. And a couple hours in, we're like, okay, this was totally worth it, and we don't want to go back home.
I know the feeling.
Yes.
Yeah. So do y'all go hardcore? Are you like no technology, no cell phones, nobody's texting, calling during that time, or are you flexible with that? When like on your getaways that happen a couple of times a year, or do you do any of that, or are you able to really unplug and not worry about it, even if you get distractions along the way?
We hadn't set any hard and fast rules with that. I mean, I think in general we don't. Like I can remember going somewhere and people calling. The trip we took last winter. I can remember people calling and just ignoring those, but checking in with the kids, and doing those kinds of things.
Yeah.
We hadn't been real strict with rules about that or anything.
Yeah, and I think we haven't been strict with the rules, but it's kind of weird how especially on date nights when we start off, there are a couple of things because we're quiet, we don't have the kids around, and we need to touch base on a couple of things, but then it just kind of naturally evolves to like, okay, we're done with that. Now we can focus on each other. So we really hadn't had to have hard and fast rules. Maybe we will. I don't know.
And now you can leave your house with your kids there, and you don't have to have babysitters.
Yeah,
that's that. Can you just speak that to me? Just that word of encouragement that like you don't have to look for like. I know this might be much with boys versus girls, but you don't have to worry about pee anywhere on the floor or like something. I found a piece of cheese on a dresser today, not the top of the dresser, but the door. Like they went to get their pajamas and forgot and just smash a piece of cheese. And I'm like, we don't even have food in the bedrooms. Who did this? Why is there cheese on? So to be able to leave the house and have your kids be there and not worry about them physically being harmed or doing something crazy, which
now sometimes being girls 2 years apart, sometimes we have to worry about them harming each other.
Right.
That's a legitimate concern.
And we have got phone calls. Mom, you need to talk to so-and-so.
Oh yeah.
At least they're trying to get a mediator, right? And they're not just killing each other while you're not there.
And it's usually about one of those phone calls we'll take, and then we're like, okay, you guys take care of it. We'll see it when we get there. Figure it out.
Right. Don't call me unless you're bleeding, okay? Figure it out. That's so good. So speaking of the girls, and anything else you want to share about any other advice, please just holler out, interrupt me. But since you're talking, I
think one quick thing too that we started several years, probably 8 years ago, is once a month we meet for lunch, and the last few years,
once a week.
once a week. Every Wednesday.
Notes, by the way, this is good.
Once a week, we'll meet for lunch, and it's literally been when I was working at the church, we would meet halfway, and we both bring our packed lunch and just eat in the car.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working at home, she'll come home, and we just make sandwiches. I mean, nothing expensive, no cost to it. But I've found that that's been super important because there's been things we need to talk about, agenda things, whether it's braces or where we're going to go on this trip and that kind of stuff that we don't have time to talk about at night. And it's been
because y'all are responsible and you go to bed at a decent hour. That's why.
Because it's pointless to try to talk to him past 6:30, 7 o'clock as he's ready for bed.
So it's, the bedtime's moved up even further. I remember you guys were like a hard 9 o'clock, like you're turning in. And I admired that so much because my brain's just getting started at that time. So this is good. You guys had lunch dates so you could reconnect and talk since you go to sleep at a very good hour.
That's right.
Yeah.
Put a nice
so all that, I think, is the trips, date nights every month. And I really think these lunches every week have helped a lot, just staying connected.
Yeah.
And not getting lost in the shuffle.
That's so good. I think for Ben and I, especially with me doing home care, I'm in and out of the car all the time, and I can always just send a quick text, or even today he just had a quick one that said, "Love you, Lenny." It was almost like, "Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm pulling for you." Like you're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing, but I love you. I still care about you. And what other jobs that I've had, it's been, I didn't even have time to look at my phone all day long and just go, and you just kind of forget why you're here, what you're doing, that sort of thing. So I love that. I've got this down. 1 time a month, date nights, 2 times a year, getaways, 1 time a week, lunch dates. Keep it going. Ben's going to love this.
We sound very scheduled. And that's him, because I am not very scheduled.
And we found that if we don't schedule it, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Amen. You remember that, Cameron, when we scheduled a lunch date one time at the YMCA, and it was like months in advance, and when it came up on the calendar, we're like, yeah, okay, we can do this. This is planned. And that was the one time that it happened, right? And now I don't work close by, so I can't do it anymore. But I totally agree. If it's not on the calendar, it ain't going down.
So, it ain't happening.
Yep.
That's right. You were going to say something earlier.
Oh, I was just thinking about the girls. We were talking about trying to keep them from killing each other when you're gone and stuff like that. As they were little and growing up, I wanted to talk about different priorities that you guys set and different things that you made sure that you wanted to incorporate into their upbringing and, just developing them as Christians, people, good citizens, that sort of thing. Did you guys have a talk about, hey, we definitely want to make this a priority in our home? Or did you guys just, that was who you were and those things just kind of came out? How did you guys do that, setting intention with your kids?
I think early on we were very intentional in instilling them biblical values. One of the things we talked about earlier with each other was that we didn't so much focus on the rules and the do's and don'ts, and here's what you do at dinner time, and here's what you don't do at dinner time, and here's the clothes you should be wearing. And
again, that's because you have girls. Okay, because we have to talk about what you don't do at dinner time. That can be another episode, but that makes me laugh. I'm like, he has girls, that's why. Yep.
But instead of focusing on those, but focusing more on values, biblical values, things we want to see in our home, character. It's funny. We said early on, just as a catchphrase, the Lows aren't liars. So if we would catch them doing something, we would like, hey, the Lows aren't liars. And we did that. The girls were tiny. We would say that over and over again. And it was funny because our 14-year-old said the other day, she said, we were joking about something. She said, Dad, the Lows aren't liars,
That was like embedded, right? She knew that.
Right. Yeah.
So good.
And those things have been more important to us than, the way they look, or, certainly we do want them to behave properly in public, but, those things weigh more on some of the other things. And I think too, just trying to instill that. We did that as a family. We talked about that a lot. We have the Bible verses, that we would study together and all that. I know we tried. We were pretty diligent early on. We would have what we called hang time with the girls, and that was again some scheduled. But every month,
you take one and I take one,
and then the next month we would switch.
Yeah.
And we were very diligent there, and I still have the books. I bought little books for them, and I always had 3 questions that I had written down for them, and one was something silly like, I probably don't want to be too silly, but what's your favorite animal, that kind of stuff, and then something about their life, what's going on at school. And then there's something spiritual there. And I still have those books. And so I gave them those questions ahead of time. They're supposed to write the answers down. And then we would talk about it more hang time. And that was a way early on to just kind of hear their heart and stay connected with them.
Yeah.
And that too was a good opportunity because they're so close together in age. Like they'd often compete for attention, and I think in my mind, I wanted to be real sure that I was not giving one more attention than the other, which is tough. I mean, it's really tough when they're together doing everything, school and everything, to divide your attention and make sure that they each feel equally heard. And so I think that was a neat way to, while they were in such a connected state, that we could separate them and really get to know each individual kid. Whereas now, we've kind of let hang time go a little bit. But they're in such different circles, and I think we interact with them in such different contexts a lot of the time,
Can you go
Not
into
saying
that
it's
a
any.
little bit? You mean like their interests are different so that they have different
Yeah,
friend groups and different.
yeah, they have different friend groups. They're in different schools. Their interests are very different. I don't feel like I almost felt when they were little, they were almost competing against each other all the time. And I don't, you might, but I don't feel that way anymore. And it's just easier to relate to them based on who they're becoming rather than competing for time, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, growing up, they were playing the same sports. For the most part, they were in the same school. Um, so there was a lot of commonality. But now that they're becoming teenagers,
Well, they're not becoming teenagers; they are.
They've certainly become developing their own identity.
Yeah.
And so it's neat to so it's not so much competition amongst them, and we can kind of celebrate them in their own way they've grown up. So like Ashton this weekend went off to an organization called Model UN, United Nations. Long story, but we were able to just kind of lean in and just kind of celebrate that with her, and dig in. What'd you love about it, and find all the things she loved about it, and spend a lot of time with that, and not feel like we were neglecting our other daughter, because there's things that she's involved in that we do the same thing with her.
That's a pretty big accolade, by the way. I had to look that up, Cameron, when you said that Ashton was doing that. I had no idea what you were talking about, and I was really impressed. I Googled it, and I'm like, dude, this is a big deal. They go talk about like diplomacy type stuff and like all this.
Oh, they were negotiating the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, I wouldn't even know where to start.
I'm so ashamed. I feel so ashamed. I have nothing. Nothing at all.
Yeah, when she brought it home for us to talk about the first time, we're like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Even the research. But I think also as they gotten older, where we spend a lot of individual time with them, when they were younger, I think we've spent more time together as a family. So we've always made dinner our priority, but I think we've leaned into that even more here recently, where we're all four sitting together and just kind of openly talking about different things. There's two times when we're together. We're at the dinner table or we're in the car, and we try to in the car, if we're not, the rule is if we're not going, we have to go an hour out of our way, to a place, for them to be able to use their phones. If the drive is shorter than an hour, you can't use your phone. Never put your phones down. And it is amazing when they do, how much conversation occurs.
Yes.
And so, those two times, car and when we're at the dinner table. And I think really leaning into, especially this time, this season that we're in, the season they're in, really taking advantage of those two times when we're together, because the rest of the time it's running around, everybody's doing their own thing and that kind of stuff. So
yes, that's so awesome that you say that, because I remember growing up in the same thing, having conversations in the car. My grandparents, my mom's parents lived 45 minutes away, so that was kind of our longest trip that we had, and I remember talking a lot then. And same thing when I'm with the boys in the car, when I pick them up from daycare, the weirdest, most interesting thoughts come out of their mouths, and you're like, what? I mean, just a few weeks ago, Brooks asked me, Mommy, how do our voices get in our throats? And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, well, and I'm thinking to myself, should I tell him this and this? And then I'm like, well, everybody has vocal cords, but everybody sounds different. And how am I going to answer that? And I said, I don't know. What do you think, buddy? He said, because God made it that way. And I was like, good answer. And that was the end of the conversation. Like, he just wanted to say, because God made it that way, and he was fine with that. Right. And I was like, dodged one there, and they're only going to get more and more fun after that, right? Like the other day we were watching a movie, and the Universal thing comes up, and it's got the world, and then the thing, he's like, Mommy, where's God in that picture? Because he sees them. I'm like, oh boy. So when you said that about the car, there have been long road trips to my parents' house where Ben is like, can we please just tell them that there's a DVD player in this van? Because we have not even broken that out yet. Like, we know that's going to be like a Pandora's box, because they love movies. And right now they have to sit around, look out the window, play with something in their lap, that sort of thing. So the day's coming. They've already started pulling it down. What's this? What's this? And I'm like, it's a TV screen. I don't know how to work it. We're not doing that yet. But yeah, so that's important. Car rides and the dinner table. Those are two most important places to connect with them and know their hearts. I love that.
Yeah.
When you guys, I remember one tip that when I was staying with you guys, you shared they had their 3 different jars for managing their money, their save, spend, and give jars, right? And then I remember you had these kits or something that you would, with the posters that you would put on the closet door, and it had like, was it the character thing?
Yeah.
Can you dig deep and tell me what that was about? I might need to look up some of that for myself. Do y'all remember any of those?
So the character, the posters were from church. It was a curriculum that we used, the orange curriculum, Reggie Joyner, Andy Stanley group.
Okay.
The curriculum that they used, and you could get those character posters, and it was like a movie poster, and they had like a character trait and a 1-sentence lesson for the month or something like that. And that was kind of fun. I just threw a bunch of those out not too long ago.
Did you? I remember that though. There was always something going on. It was good.
Video came with it, and there was all kinds of activities throughout the month you could, all around this character trait.
Oh wow.
So I don't know if they still do that or not, because it's been a while since we've done that. But,
yeah, I just remember the poster, but it looked like a good idea, whatever it was. So it's like, put that in everything.
It was great.
Yes.
But then the save, spend, give jars, Caden, in fact, Caden might still have they were save, spend, jar, give plastic cups, actually, is what they ended up being. She might still have hers in her dresser. But so that was just to teach them that these are the 3 things that you should really do with your money. And whether that was effective or not, we were talking about this earlier. I don't know that they necessarily always save some, spend some, give some away, but they're at least aware,
right?
At least built-in awareness in them.
Oh, definitely. Built-in awareness in me. I was like, man, I need to be taking notes of what I need to be doing with my kids. It was so good. It was, because you don't think about this stuff, and school doesn't teach you that stuff, right? Nothing. Yeah.
But one of the things that we started doing too, as a couple here recently, I don't know how long ago, but we started doing, so he's Mr. Finance and Save, and he started doing a budget. So we sit down and we do a monthly budget, like a line item budget, where this is how much we're going to spend on this, X, Y, and Z, what have you. And at the outset, that was difficult for me until we got into the rhythm of that. And now I find that I wish we'd done it earlier, because it's so incredibly freeing for somebody like me who, wants to have some disposable income to be able to give away.
Yeah.
And people, and that was a big thing that we could implement once we put a budget into place. But the girls also have kind of felt not the pain, but they've felt the strain, I guess, of having to get used to a budget. And now they know, and they're more aware, and they'll tell us like, Mom, I've got to have school jeans. Can you put that in the next month's budget?
Wow.
So they're much more aware of really wise financial management. Whether they do that with their own money or not, remains to be seen. But I think that's just another way we've been able to kind of. You're laughing.
Well, because they still get mad when we say, "Oh, we've run out of restaurant money. We can't go out anymore." Like, this stuff stinks.
Yeah.
So, if you mind me asking, how much leeway have you given them, like with their money and their accounts? How do y'all manage that? Do you help them oversee, balance a checkbook, all that stuff? Because I don't think high school still incorporates stuff like that. Do they? What is?
Nathan's got a personal finance class, I think, where they're learning some of that. But when Ashton got a first job, then we let her open a checking account and get a debit card and those kinds of things. And we've been through some things with her. She probably needs some more
what
lessons
teenager
on
doesn't?
that. Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't know. That's probably an area where we could do a lot better, specifically with her.
Yeah. With some of them, well, with Caden, I know in particular, she at one point in time really wanted an
iPhone.
iPhone or a watch or one of them, one of the two. And she literally had the money for it, from birthday money and that kind of stuff that she'd saved up. And she was ready to write the check. But one of the things we did was to, in essence, kind of create what we would call a budget. I mean, it's a budget, but we just divided up what are the things you would want to spend that money on? Because if you still want to pay, have money to be able to go to the movies, go to this thing, you're not going to have that if you spend all that on this one thing,
Yeah.
And, in essence, it is a budget, but it's just one of those things of just kind of planning in our mind that, how to use your money. Don't use every penny that you have coming in, or don't use it all in one thing, because if you step back and think about it, you got some other things you got coming up or the things you want to do. I think she's been more open to that than Ashton.
Well, that's really cool. It's like you're giving her, different doors. Like you could spend the money on this one thing, or you could spend this on 6 or 7 things, either a thing or the experiences, and just let her decide what's more valuable. And not that she could never have that thing, but maybe time it differently or use her money differently to get through the events and then make a purchase, down the road.
I think actually what we did was we created a bucket for, and we called it like her phone line item. It was a line item. So, instead of buying the one phone, she was able to divide her money up into 6 different buckets, and we had a phone bucket. And then, she just kept adding money to that bucket. And then finally, when she had enough money in that one bucket, then she was able to buy the phone, and not in spite of all the other things she wanted to do. So,
Yeah, that's really cool.
But I think it's just one of those things too, that we think they're getting it.
But you never
they
know.
do or not, we don't know. But it's just one of the things we feel like, we got to do our diligence.
Right.
And then instill that to them, and whether they take it and run with it, that's on them.
Well, and I think the other thing too is figuring out who they are and how they behave. And so, like for Kaden, she is, I want it all, and it's the novelty wears off in about 10 seconds flat. And so, being able to point that out to her in terms of money is like, Kaden, remember that thing you bought last week that you haven't touched since last week? You're getting ready to do the same thing. So wait a day. And he was really good about that. Yeah, you can buy that if you want to, but you're not going to do it right now. Not an impulse buy. Wait 24 hours. And if you still really have to have it tomorrow and you have the money, well, then maybe that's fine. But
that's so important. That's like telling them to hit the brakes on that instant gratification. Everything's at our fingertips. Like, just expectation. I have this makes sense. Get this. And then living with that remorse after, like, oh, I did that, That's good.
Yep.
That is good. And one thing I did catch you say is that with your budget and your allotment for things that you like to do and be able to give to people, I was the recipient of that. And you guys coming and blessing Ben and I and saying, get out of here. You're going on a date. We're watching these kids for you. Dinner's on us. I was like, are you kidding me? That was amazing. That is like a million times better than when you pull up to the takeout window and the person in front of you bought you your meal or whatever. That personally hasn't happened to me, but I know that it is way better than that feeling, because that was like, what, you're taking my kids? What, you're giving me food to eat? What, we get an hour and a half, 2 hours together? Like, that was priceless. I can attest to that. Benny can attest to that. We love you guys. That was awesome. That was just speaking my love language right there. That was so good. Yes, definitely. And that's all you're going to get for right now, because like I said, the rest is too good to cram into one little show. So we got to break it up. We got to make it separate. We got to make sure you get this great advice. You can't buy advice this great. Come on now. Really, I hope you got something amazing out of this. I hope that you ask God to use this in your marriage, in your life, personally, and together with your spouse. I pray that God would just open up doors for you and your spouse to walk through together and talk about things to relate to each other and really let your marriage thrive. If I can say anything about this couple, it's that they are not just in it to survive. They are in it to really have a marriage that is thriving. So why would we not want to do the same? Why would we not want to have a lasting relationship with our spouse that has meaning and purpose beyond the kids and beyond the hustle and bustle and beyond the career, and really understand that this is the first and greatest human relationship that God made. Don't you think we should put enough time into it to make it amazing? Put some of this advice to practice. Hang around for the next episode, which will be part 2B of the marriage series with Cameron and Eric Lowe, as they finish up some great points and really practical wisdom and advice to take away. Okay, thanks guys. Until next time. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Good News Mama. If you did, please leave me a review on iTunes. A 5-star review is best, and hit subscribe. Share with your friends on Instagram and Facebook. Please email me at lynn@goodnewsmama.com. You know I love questions. I love feedback. I want to know what you want to know. We're going to talk about what means something to you. So let's hear it. Follow me on Instagram at Good News Mamas. That's mamas with an S. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Keep your head up, keep your heart humble, and share that good news.